Arnes, why do you have my X pluses?
Because these are the best two things I've ever seen. Like, did you see the movie?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we just watched it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, these are the greatest costumes I've ever seen.
Really?
Get the why? I mean, look at this. Even the figure has the representation of the costume where it gets split at. Right there. You see this?
We're just gonna get on to the review. Listen up, Rangers! Welcome to the Geek Chest. My name's Steve.
And my name's Arnes.
And today we're going to be going over Gigantis the Fire Monster. Or I guess you could call it Godzilla Raids Again. Depends on which iteration you want to go with.
And sadly, I watched both of the versions, the American and the Chinese, so...
And we're probably going to go over the American version because that's the one I watched primarily as a kid, and it's the one I enjoy the most. Sadly, because I know most people shun the American version, but we're going to go over it anyways.
I don't know why, though. Like, seriously, like, you watch a Japanese version, and I'm sorry, I said Chinese earlier, Japanese version, and then the American version, and the American version did so much better. At least, like, they had, like, sounds in there and music and stuff.
Yeah, but very much, real quick, to go over the premise of the story, is that if you watch the original Godzilla movie, he died. In this one, since we went over the English dub version, he's back. But he's actually a member of the Anguirus family, and is also called Gigantis, not Godzilla.
You know what? I did notice that entire movie didn't say Godzilla.
Yes, and also he doesn't have his roar for pretty much the entirety of the movie. But two fishing pilots end up finding the monsters fighting on a remote island after one of them randomly crash lands onto the island and gets rescued by the other one. Which, of course, giant monsters found on island middle of freaking nowhere.
I'm sorry, it's just like when you start talking about that, I just start thinking about the movie. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, with just the awesome narration by George Takei throughout the entire film. Which, I don't know why. Like, it's something like when I was a kid, I loved it when they were explaining to me. It's kind of like a picture book, but now in this movie, it's... Anyway, I'll get sidetracked. But anyways, so the monsters end up falling into the water. The guys end up going and telling the Japanese government that the monsters are back, and they have to figure out a way to get rid of them. Which, we're going to get a little bit spoilery probably in this video, because this is kind of like a fun one. But... pretty much for the movie, it was done, I believe, a year later than the original Godzilla movie, and they used an entirely new suit, which is Arnes' first complaint about the movie, and one thing I still actually don't mind.
How can you not mind? Like, that thing comes out of... you know what? Not even gonna say anything.
Because personally, like,
you guys...
the puppet looks good. I love the puppet. Like, his teeth are like all jagged and scary looking. And he looks sweet. And I don't think he looks that bad.
Somebody back me up about this costume.
He has a face only a mother could love, but I can love it too. And he's got a nice lean shape to it. Anguirus looks cool.
This scene when he comes out of the water. I just can't explain that. What is that?
It looks like just a piece of wood just kind of drifting on the water.
I mean, I'm not bashing on this movie. Actually, the American version was a lot better than the Japanese version, to me at least. But still, that scene with it, just...
Yeah, there's some weird suit movement parts of it. Which first we're going to primarily go over the plot of the movie, which is...
so much better than the first one. I'll be the first to say it. So much better than the first one, because it had a point, and it had two monsters fighting.
Yeah, that's one thing I enjoy personally about this movie, is the monsters are actually fighting. Like, you actually have another monster to conflict with Godzilla in this film, and it kind of gives it a little bit more of a dynamic, like there's actually some kind of fear element to it. Because I know I primarily, it might just be mainly because of my experience, because I actually seen this film way before I seen the original Godzilla film, which... I really love the first one, but it's just like this one had more of like an eerie ambiance to the film, especially when we were watching the American version, because they added those creepy 50s special effects sound to it, which is very absent in the original Japanese. Which I guess you could say the Japanese has more of like kind of like a spookiness to it because it's very quiet when the monsters are around.
How can it be quiet when there's like 300-foot monsters walking around?
Like, you still have sound effects. You just not have like the music to kind of back it up.
I'm gonna back this guy up.
But pretty much for the plot, it works. Like, I was invested in it when I was watching it.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that really kind of throws you out is the narration sequences, which, again, when I was a kid, didn't bother me as much. Nowadays, it's like, he's explaining, like, she looks out the window in horror as her city is like got flames. And it's like, literally, you're just watching her look out the window with wide eyes at the city on fire. Like,
maybe,
you
Steve,
didn't really need to describe this scene.
Maybe he's trying to explain this to the blind people. They can't see. What are you hating on blind people for?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, shame on you, Steve.
They're the ones that love this movie.
There you go.
But it works really good. And the funny thing about the plot, too, is that for a lot of people that do comparisons for, like, Godzilla 2014 with, like, trying to compare it to the original one, this movie actually reminds me a lot more of Godzilla 2014 than any other Godzilla film, personally. Because it's even, like, the story kind of is more or less the same, where, like, people kind of come across the monsters, they don't know how to deal with them effectively, so when the two start showing up in the main city, they're trying to lure them away with certain tactics. Tactics fail, monsters show up, they let them fight. And then they have to deal with... But then, like, the ending shifts a little bit when they just have to deal with one of the monsters because one gets brutally murdered.
Oh, that scene was epic.
Yeah, which... So, for the plot, it works really well for me, because even with... Like, the acting seemed pretty good in it, even with the kind of sub-dubbing. Like, more or less, it's kind of hit and miss. Like, Kobayashi... I don't know what's wrong with him. Like, to me, the original Japanese seemed fine. In this, he seems kind of special.
Yeah, he's
also really bossy.
He's one epic character. Get in the car. You're driving me. Let's go. Why aren't you in the car?
Why are you at my house? He's like, your father just left. Let's go. It's just like nobody asks questions.
The guy's demanding. He knows what he wants. Chop, chop. Get it done.
Yeah. So for the plot for this film, it works for me. More or less, though, it's one of the things, though, you have to really like 50s sci-fi campy movies to enjoy the English dub, like myself.
Which I'm okay with.
Yeah, which he seemed to be perfectly fine. But if you want something that's a little bit more of a serious movie, definitely the Japanese version then. And then we're going to move on to the suits.
And this whole time, me and Steve were connected. This is where we're just...
Because personally, for the most part, I get there's flaws. I still enjoy them.
There's flaws, and there's enjoying flaws, and then there's this. These two things in front of us, man. Like, why couldn't they have been like this? Like, Xbox.
Like solid? Well, for the most part, when you see the film, they're pretty good looking for the majority. Ow! The scenes?
Do you see that scene when they fight? His entire back opens. What is he? Anamorphing? Is he evolving? I don't understand.
He's digivolving.
Yeah. What is this? What is the Godzilla supposed to jump inside of that suit? Like they combine as one? I don't understand this.
Sweet.
You monster!
Yeah. Anger has had... You can see, if you're really paying attention, there's some issues with the suit, because like the shell tends to pop. Like you can see some of the old posters. Even on the old posters, the suit, the shell on it's kind of flopping off. Which is pretty much where you see a lot of the flaws is Anger's. Is the suit looks good, but the seams are where it starts kind of falling apart when you're watching it.
As soon as he starts moving, starts falling apart. As long as he's standing, the suit looks epic.
Yeah, like pan away back shots from the side look amazing. And like the close-up shots look really good as well. Godzilla, on the other hand, you don't really notice a whole lot wrong with the suit, like seam-wise or anything during the film. Problem is that face. I'll give you that one. It's definitely a face only certain people can appreciate, because here we even got the actual figure to show you guys the face, because it's kind of shifted in a little bit of a wonky way, especially right here on the lip. Doesn't really match up as well to the guy's overall facial structure, which I kind of understand people don't appreciate that as much as others.
Oh man, that's the entire like the worst part was when he comes out of that water. That scene, like right off the beginning, just kills it. But I understand what they were going. They just right at the bottom, and then they were slowly working up, and it was very slowly with the suit.
Also, like when he's walking on the water, he just has that derpy kind of look on his head. Like, and then they're like dropping the flares. He's like, he's got like that Rocky kind of syndrome to his face.
He took
like
one too many shots. He just took
Adrian.
Too many shots. I'm telling you, like that was. I could not feel these suits at all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I guess I like the suits, but that's more of a. This is nostalgia right here. Like I get it. I realize why people don't like the suits. They're not definitely the best in the series by far, but I personally enjoyed them. Someone newer like him, though, no. Alright, my favorite, special effects. What did you think of the special effects in this movie? Like, the use of the roars, perhaps? He's just coming out of the wires. Because in the entire movie, you hear the Godzilla roar a couple of times. The majority-wise, though, it's you hear Anguirus, which for the story it makes sense because he's a part of the Anguirus family. They're kind of related. Makes sense that they're gonna have sort of the same roar, I guess, even though they're two totally different creatures in general. Like he looks very different than him, so why would they both have the same roar? You know. But in terms of the story, I understood. Even as a kid, it didn't really throw me off that much. But since it's supposed to be Godzilla, kind of want the Godzilla roar, you know?
Yeah, especially since he's the Godzilla that moves on, you know?
Yeah, it's just like, especially like the way the movie kind of ends and transitions into King Kong vs. Godzilla, you think it's this guy right here, and then they call him Godzilla in the next movie, and even the Japanese version is definitely Godzilla, where you just Americans like to mess names up.
So I don't. Special effects are.
Which the funny thing is too is you figure they would have the audio for Godzilla, and if you watch the Japanese version, a lot of the scenes where they throw in the Anguirus voice, it's not there. Like that's one thing. That's the only thing that kind of bugged me about the Japanese version. It's really quiet a lot of the time, which kind of gives it like that eeriness to it, which is something I can kind of appreciate a little more because it just helps to make it more of like a horror movie.
You try to defy their nonsense.
So the American studios decided to spice it up a bit and add more sound effects to it with the monster voices. But you figure again, they got the Godzilla sound cue. Why not just run with it instead of going with the Anguirus? But then, with how they try and change the story a bit, again, it makes sense. I'm not condoning it, but it makes sense.
Like I understand what they were trying to do with it. Like there's like certain things in special effects category we're going to get to. I'm going to complain about, but the sound thing, you know, I get what they were doing with it.
Yeah, and then for the most part, it's pretty much kind of on par with 54 for a lot of the scenes. There's some scenes with, like, you can tell, like, I'm going to call them the toy tanks, where they kind of show up and you can see the people standing next to them. Clearly not real.
What?
Which I understand limitations at the time. It's not going to happen. But in the first movie, they kind of looked okay. Like,
made it so much better.
It was believable. While this, even when I wasn't looking for it, it still shows up.
Because it was so bad where you didn't have to look for it. It was right there.
Yeah, it was just right in your face. Which, it's only like when they're like coming off the shores kind of scenes. It's the only time you really see it, so it's not like a major part of the movie, but it's there. But pretty much for the rest of it, it's okay. Like the jet's flying, look fine for the most part, except for that one weird scene where he's like,
yeah, I didn't understand.
But then when he's like spinning upward and back, then he still crashes normally into the water.
Yeah, I didn't understand that part. Like, how did they what was the logic behind that? I mean, I get it, like 50s or whatever, but
yeah, there's that. And then when they're like shooting the rockets at him and stuff, it literally looks like just like firecrackers are going off in the air. Like, it doesn't make any rhyme or reason with how the actual explosions are happening.
Because you would assume this missile has to hit something before it explodes. Not one of those missiles actually hits him. Like, if you watch that really close, you'll see they're all
almost, yeah, so it almost looks like the flares when they were dropping them. Literally, they just kind of like pasted on Godzilla, called it a day. It seemed like, compared to the original one, where those same kind of special effects seemed a little bit more believable, in this one, it kind of strayed away from it a little bit.
I'm assuming it was their budget cut.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think they had as much of a budget for this one, because especially with the suits were actually lighter in this one than they were in the original one. Mainly because he's fighting another monster, they want to lighten the
More
suit up so he
movement.
can actually fight. Which is kind of funny too, because the fights in this movie, which we probably should have went over in the whatever, the fights in this movie are actually pretty cool in my opinion. Like, even though you see a lot of the suit's flaws when they're fighting, but then they like sped up the film a bit where they're fighting. So actually, unlike most Godzilla movies where he has like some weight to him and the movement's a little bit slow because just the mass and they're trying to convey just how heavy these monsters are when they're fighting. This one, they just foregone all of that for like mixed martial arts in the like steel cage kind of gritty fighting that they're going to be doing.
I can't agree with you on that. That's the one thing. Besides this, like the way the suits were made, that's the thing that bugged me the most is how they sped up those battles. Like it's just no.
You know, like Godzilla be like,
Yeah, like,
just like
what
grabbing
is
his
it?
head, trying to throw.
Like it was just like way too much. Like, and it wasn't like the entire. It was just like certain scenes, like in bursts, where they sped them up. You know.
Yeah, and then when they do the close-ups, it's more like normal speed when they're
Yeah.
like trying to bite each other's necks and stuff. Which, like, for me, it made the fight seem more realistic. Because especially when we get to the Showa movies, they're a lot more like wrestling matches more than actually monsters fighting.
Which is a little
'Cause, like,
better.
Because, like, in this one, it's pretty much just them scratching, clawing, biting, and just trying to maim each other.
Being monsters.
Yeah, being monsters. Which I can appreciate. Granted, it's weird to see them sped up where it's really the only time they really, that I can think of off the top of my head, they really sped up the animation for the fights. Because usually it's either they are moving just pretty much as fast as the suit actors are going, or they actually slowed down the footage.
Yeah, no, they sped them up, which really was kind of.
Well, towards the end of the movie, there's this avalanche scene.
That part never existed. I don't know. What
You
you're
don't
talking
like
about.
that scene?
No.
Where they're dumping the ice cubes on Godzilla?
No, don't ruin it.
I don't know. I enjoyed it.
People just don't get it.
Especially like watching-
Godzilla was the first one that did the ice bucket challenge.
Yeah,
There you go.
he beat everyone
In the
to it.
50s, people.
In the 50s. 55. Again, it works, especially since that's one of the more emotional scenes in the movie. It happens during this sequence. And
Wait. You weren't emotionally scarred when his friend crashed into the sea and he was lost and they couldn't find him? How dare you, Steve?
Sorry. Well, you didn't really crash into the sea. I thought he just crashes into the mountain.
Whatever. Like, he
He goes,
crashed somewhere and it was just like...
He's like, oh! With this derpy little minion voice. So overall, it's a little bit of difference of opinion because I actually still rather enjoy this movie for the most part. I get the suits have flaws. The voice audio cues are a little bit off with the monsters. But the plot's still pretty good. The fight scenes are still relatively enjoyable and very beastly, which I can get behind. And the ending for it, one thing to point out, it's the only time in the entirety of Godzilla that the military won. The military were actually able to stop Godzilla. Not some random mad scientist, not some other monsters, or him winning the day and walking away. The military stopped him with military stuff.
You haven't seen a 97 Godzilla, have you?
We don't talk about 98.
98, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Again.
I'm sorry. 98. I can't... Oh, technically they made it in 97, so I'm technically right, but came out in 98.
It's not even a Godzilla movie anymore.
That
It's not even Godzilla.
I have the...
It's official.
I think I have
We
the
don't talk about it.
I don't think I have the DVD.
I don't even know if we're going to do it on this channel. If you guys want to see it, we'll get to it.
No, we won't. We're just going to skip that.
That'll be after the Heisei movies. We'll do that one.
But yeah, no, that right there, Military 1. They shoved those missiles right on the side of that thing, whatever that thing was.
Put it out of its misery so we didn't have to deal with it again.
And then they left one egg.
Dun dun dun!
And then we sold it to Japanese people.
Yeah, it's pretty much what happened. We were like, yeah, we're not making another movie. Here you go. Just take it. Take it and do what you want with it. Have fun in Final Wars.
So, it's not the first time. Or it's not the only time. Not the only
It's the only official time.
Not the only time.
Only official time. You don't count. Stop telling me I'm wrong. You don't know. So I would actually recommend watching this personally, especially if you're a fan of older, eerie 1950s movies, and this will have some enjoyment for you.
I agree with Steve on most parts. Most parts. It is actually a better storyline just for the simple fact Godzilla is not fighting people. He's actually fighting another... Oh, excuse me. What was that? It's not Godzilla, technically. It's... Anguirus. They're fighting each other.
Killer of the living.
Yeah, so they're fighting each other, so it's actually a monster movie. And not just monster versus people movie.
Not monster walking through town.
Yeah. But the suits... Oh, God, I don't need people hating me any more than what they already hate me.
No, it's fine. Most everybody else hates these suits too.
That's
I'm in the minority.
It's atrocious. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's sad too, because I have my 3X pluses. 2 of them are from this movie.
Good choice, Steve.
I don't know, I felt like I was winning. Especially since only one of them actually increased in value. Well, these guys, I think you get cheaper than what I paid for them. Wah, wah, wah.
Oh yeah, overall, definitely watch it because it is, in certain parts, it is better than the first one, and then you just have to see it. I recommend it. Watch it.
Yeah, like realistically, it's not the best Godzilla movie ever. It's watchable for the most part. If you don't enjoy campy movies, like highly campy movies, I'd recommend watching the Japanese version of that because it's a little bit more of a serious tone. And all the audio cues and what the story is actually correct.
No, stick with the American version.
Yeah, if you want something that's a little bit different and amusing, like it's one of those movies, like, I actually enjoy watching it more to make fun of it than to actually watch it as a movie.
Yeah, because I think I watched the Japanese on Netflix when they had it, so...
Yeah, which is generally a lot of these Godzilla movies. Like, even if I don't... There's only a few that I don't enjoy in general.
We'll get to those.
We'll get to those. There's another one I don't enjoy it, but I like making fun of it.
And deep down inside, I'm going to hate this movie, but I'll be like, this is the greatest thing ever just because Steve doesn't like it. It's already winning.
So what do you guys think? If you guys watched Godzilla Raids Again or Gigantis the Fire Monster, please let us know in the comments below what you guys thought of the film. Help us defeat those kaijus by hitting that like button. Subscribe to become a ranger today, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.